What's going on, everybody? Gar Hoover here, and today we're going to be looking at my track Cruise, which I made on the PO-33. Cruise is kind of like a lo-fi house, sort of bass house track with a lot of funky elements. I recorded in some of the guitars myself, and if you want the samples for that, you can grab them down below in the description. Just download the file. It's got all the samples there. Use them however you want for PO-33 or whatever else. And also, if you have yet to listen to the track, I encourage you listen up here or check down below, because we're going to take it in chunks as we break it down. And with that being said, let's take a look at Cruise on the PO-33. Alright, so we're going to start first with the samples. I got my kind of verse bass pluck. Then I've got the chorus bass line. I've got the kind of pluck that carries throughout the chorus. Got that acid part at the end of the chorus, kind of the outro. And then I had sampled one of my electric guitars into the melodic track from what I have chopped down here on the drum tracks. Didn't end up using the sample, but it's still fun to have it. And then another bass sound that's just a little more tame as needed. And then looking at the drums, as you can hear, some of them sound repetitive. It's because, as always, I layer my hi-hats and cymbals and other shaker sounds with drums, like percussive hits such as kicks or snares, just so then I only need one track for all of my drum sounds. And so that's kind of that. And you can hear I used the two separate different ones, and you can hear the kick layered with the snare there. That's a good example. So when it comes to that 4 on the floor feel, I just have to fill up this with a regular kick and then that. So then I'm good to go, and I don't need an extra track to layer in the snare. That's just my electric guitar I sampled in. I recorded it all into Logic and then chopped it up so that it was even tighter and so that it was all close together, so I didn't use as much space when I recorded it in. So when you listen to the recording of it in, if you download the samples, it sounds a bit sloppy, and that's because I've removed most of the space between each of the different guitar strums and hits, just so I could save space. But when I decide to sequence it out in the pocket operator, then you start to hear the rhythm again. And then I added this last minute. I don't think I have it in the sample pack, but it's just like an 808 ride. That's just like a good crash as a transitional sound. That's going to do it for the samples, and now we're going to take a look at the verse. Alright, so let's take a look now at the verse. That's all it is. It just keeps looping. So you can hear there's actually essentially 2 loops of the bass line, but the drums keep kind of switching up, which keeps it interesting. So the bass line is very simple. You can see it's sequenced in, and that's all it is. That's all the groove is. And I have some swing on, so you hold down BPM and you turn the knob, and it adjusts not the BPM but the swing, and you can switch it up like that. And you can hear it's just a 2-pattern loop, but then I have it going from 1 to 2, and then I have it repeating in 3 and 4. It's the drums that change to add the intrigue. So with the drums, you can hear it's going from that to the snare hit, where it's the layered kick. And I'll show you the steps so you can see where I sequence stuff out. So obviously with house, I'm going to have some stuff on the 3rd vertical row right here, especially around like 120 and up. It's going to have that offbeat groove. So those illuminated ones are the hi-hat, but then you can hear I've got some alternative stuff going on with these other hi-hats, which are layered in that aren't open. They're closed hats. So it adds some additional off-kilter vibes, and it helps out with the groove. And then you can hear those snare rolls. So I'm adding in, one of these is it. It's down here. So instead of it having a hi-hat there, I'm adding a snare hit that's a little bit softer in volume in comparison to the ones on the main area, which is fun. And then I add the little cowbell sound, the classic 808 sound there on the second loop through, just to add some intrigue. And then it's got a little more, you can hear there's a little bit more snare action going on here. You can see I've added another one right here and right here that are lower volume when you listen to it. So they're not blaring through, and that's how you just hit what note you want, and you can adjust the volume, and then you punch it in, sequence it in like that. And it's very, very easy to do, but it adds a lot more groove and isn't as forceful when you want a snare hit if you're just trying to do some fun accent stuff. And you can hear also, I'll just address this right now, at the start of the pattern, I have that one ride sound, and it just only goes for that one because I have the cowbell going on the third pattern there. And then you have the guitars, or it's just one guitar part really, but you can see how I have it sequenced out. It looks like I should be hearing a lot of guitar being hit, but it kind of sounds like a delay. And so what I'm doing is I sequenced in this rhythm where it's a proper delay where it would be sequenced out like a dotted eighth. And when I recorded it in, I sequenced it out and then hit play. And then I held down right and I adjusted the volume while it was being recorded in so that it's fading out. And that's how you get that delay sound. And I also did the same with the filter. I rolled out the filter and it creates that kind of delayed sound where it fades out nice. And I have it one, you can barely hear it. It's super, super quiet on that final one, but it helps give the effect of a real delay. You can barely hear it there, but in context. And then it works out really well. So that delay part, even though it has the sense of space, it still has a sense of groove in how the delay is sequenced out. It's pretty tight feeling still. And it actually flows with the swing that is programmed in as well. Whereas a regular delay won't adjust for swing. This being sequenced in where you're adjusting the volume instead keeps it on the sequencer grid and takes into account swing, so it has even more groove to it and contributes to the overall sense of swing for the track. And so that kind of covers this section. Now we're going to take a look at the build. All right, time to look at the build. It's pretty simple once again, but we'll just take a look at it real quick. And then it goes into the drop. So you noticed I had to switch up the pattern. This build actually takes up not just 4 patterns, but 6 patterns. So I have it looping through the first time. Once again, let's get it out of the way. I'm using the ride to kind of add some energy. Same there. And I don't think I used it here. No, I didn't, because I was going for the snare on the second time or third time through. So with that, that's just the ride to kind of contribute, and it provides something consistent going from the initial loop from the right here, and then if we were to go in, because you hear a different guitar part, but the bass changes, so you can hear it doesn't go from the bass that we had. Now we're looking at, but when I punch it in here, you can hear it feels quieter, thinner, and that's because I took the filter and I cut out, using a high pass filter, a lot of the low end, and that actually helps when the chorus comes around to add extra punch and more weight as the bass comes in full. But for right now, for this build, I didn't want the bass to be all the way there, but still hinting at, oh, this thing is probably got some heft to it. So when you hear it, you know something's coming. But then you aren't getting this full bass that you hear here when everything's coming in strong. So it works out really well. That's the same groove as I was talking about. Let me show you it. But it changes. Instead of going just at the end like you'd hear here, it's the completion of that melody I decided to write for the bass line. And it's really just following a pentatonic scale. So the pentatonic scale on here, if you want to get kind of like a bluesy or a funk groove, would be, if you're doing a minor pentatonic, you're going to start on the 13 and go to the 15, 16. Sounds pretty bad with this lead, but you get the point. You're just going 1 or 13, 15, 16, 9, 11, 5, 7, 8, 1, 3. So it kind of repeats itself, which is really nice and makes it really easy to remember that scale and keeping it kind of in that funky groove. So if you're doing anything with house, that's a great scale on the pocket operator to just stay with. But now we got the guitars, which are kind of hinting at what's going to come in the chorus. It's the same groove. So I just have it kind of cutting off that. That's how I get that nice click sound. I incorporate that into the sequence here. And you don't really hear it until... But you can see what I'm doing there. And that's just the first part. Even though the guitar part technically loops around, I wanted it to still have the feel of it being played out rather than just a simple loop. So I actually recorded that guitar part twice with a phaser effect on. So then when I put it in the pocket operator and chopped it up, the different guitar parts, even if it's the same hit, sound different. You hear that difference? They're the same guitar part I played out, but there's just some variations that keep it interesting and not as loopy sounding. So that's kind of that. And then the fun part about this is the final build part, which is something I love to do on the pocket operators, is with a drum snare. So how you might hear this is this should sound like on the eighth notes that are very, very strong, but once again, notice the difference in volume. There's a difference in pitch as well, but the difference in volume aids to this groove in the build instead of just coming out with just straight hits. So adjusting volume once again on a snare can add those cool accent sounds and provide energy that otherwise would just be obnoxious if you just had it at full volume. So keep that in mind. And then how I make the build is, once again, I punch in the rhythm with the volume in, and then I hold down right and I adjust the pitch of the sample. You know how fun it is to get it to the right pitch. But I do that, hold down right, and I adjust it as we are going through the pattern. So I'll hold down right and be turning it up like that. And it helps create that build effect as the pitch increases. And then the final part, I have that little ride again. And then I have the classic snare roll, which is back at its regular pitch and volume. But with the swing groove, these three hits, instead of just being kind of a straight hit, it has this awesome kind of groove and vibe to it that you probably hear a lot if you listen to any new UK garage or garage, or some stuff from like Mal 5, or not Mal 5, Mal P, stuff like that. And it's got that fun groove, which really tells us we're about to get into some funky stuff here. And I really just messed something up. So there you go. That is going to do it for the build. Now we're going to take a look at the chorus. Okay, so let's take a listen to the chorus. Yes, so it's got a fun groove. It's the same bass line, so we can just start with that. Same bass line as we heard in the build, but now I have turned off the high pass, and you can hear its full weight now with the bass line. So it still has, it's covering a lot of the frequency spectrum. It's got a lot of high end, so it's got a lot of presence, but it's got that weight too. So it's aiding to the overall groove of the track with the kick drum. And so I don't really need to look at that since we already looked at it with the build. Another add is this kind of pluck sound. And it's nothing too crazy. It's just, that's all the groove is. But you can hear I'm making a fake delay. So you can hear these lighter, or see both of these are lighter colors. That's the initial hit, and this is when it's fading out. And so once again, adjusting the volume and sequencing it in provides this fun groove with this delay sound that's not really a delay, but just an adjustment in volume that sounds really good. And it's, once again, it's not a complicated sound, but it really adds to the overall feel of the track. And so next up, the drums really are kicking here. There's a lot going on. We got a layered, instead of just a clean kick, we get a layered kick that's a kind of tighter. I almost used that one, but that's the open hi-hat, so I didn't want to go too intense. So you can see I've got that sequenced in. And then we have that other snare that's in there now. That sounds a bit more live sounding. And we got the open hats going strong, and then a couple kind of clicks, 808 kind of clave sounds that you'll kind of hear if we go from pattern to pattern. I have them moving around a bit, and I've got these other two kind of bongo sounds going too. So between kind of the clicks and the bongo groove, and I also have some additional snare hits, but it's, instead of just making it just the 4 on the floor with the kick and the snare and the hi-hat, adding those additional percussive elements adds additional groove and intrigue and keeps it from getting kind of boring and dry. So both of these bongo sounds really add to contributing to it being funky, but keep it still grooving and gives it that good house feel to it. And as you guys heard, I'll actually jump back to the final build part because it's the same bass line and it comes back around and hits hard. So when we look at it like this and jump back in, so I use that as a transitional sound because I was like, well, I already have the pattern and it works well and it feels very smooth to have everything cut out and just do the snare roll except for the bass, with the bass kind of cut out because it has a high pass filter on it for the 16th pattern. And then jumping back either into the chorus or the outro, it aids it really, really well. And then the guitars are the exact same as the build. And you can hear that. when we look at that build part again, it has the guitars in it as well. So it still has the feel of the chorus. It just feels stripped down for a second and then it comes back strong. And so that's kind of it for the chorus. It's not too complicated because it's already using some of the other elements from the build or from the verse and just building upon those to create a fuller, heavier, and groovier chorus sound that is, it keeps it in that like kind of bass house feel with that bass sound. Is not necessarily something that you'd find like in funky type of house music, but the rest of the elements keep it pretty funky and fun. And so with that, we're going to take a look at the outro next. All right, so very simple, but let's take a look at the outro. That's all it is. It's 2 patterns, but if you get 2 pattern loops that sound good, you can kind of ride them out for quite a few loop arounds, which I do here, especially for an outro after people have kind of been overwhelmed or had some fun with the chorus. To go to something where it's kind of looping and familiar for a little bit is good because it kind of calms them back down and gets them ready for the verse to come around again. So with this, very simple, same exact drums. Drums are all the same. Hi-hat's still going. We still have that clave kind of click sound, or rim shot, really, not a clave. And then the bongos, they're looping again. So drums exactly the same. And you can hear the guitars, once again, exact same. So something else familiar. But you don't have the bass line going. You have the same click sound, or this kind of pluck sound, which is simple, easy to use. It's not too crazy. The thing that's different, we don't have a heavy bass line, so we're kind of removing the bass, which is normal for sort of some outros. And instead we're adding this acid line, which is not too complicated. It's kind of following the guitar part. So you'll see 1-4 as we see with the guitar part, if we were to go to that sound. 1-4. So it kind of cuts out right after each guitar hit when it goes. So if we were to look at it, it stops for a second, and then the acid line kind of keeps plucking along. Because I tried some other complicated ones, but really I wanted it to stay in a familiar groove without introducing something new and crazy that's only a 2-pattern loop. I wanted it to kind of just be kind of a cool down, but also still adding some intrigue with a new acid line. And also what I do for this part to add a little bit more intrigue to this acid line is I held down right and turned on the filter mode. And I'll turn up the resonance. I'm over-exaggerating it, but that's what I did. I held down right and I adjusted the resonance so that the resonance was pretty tight and peaky, and then started to adjust the filter for the track. So on top of the acid sample, which already has a filter going, I added an additional filter so that it has extra energy to it and intrigue as it kind of surges in and out. Because I wasn't adjusting the volume of it, I wanted to still have some element that keeps it moving rather than a very static, simple sequence. And so for that, I hope you guys enjoyed this track. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below. Don't forget to download the samples and let me know what styles you want me to make. If you want me to do a tutorial with something else, or if you have other questions, things that I should break down that I don't normally do, I'd be happy to walk through those in another video. So with that being said, I hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you in the next one.